My name is Imani Thompson, and in 3 days, I was supposed to be walking down the aisle. By now, I should have been sipping champagne, arguing over centerpieces, maybe sending my bridesmaids one last "can you believe this is happening?" text. But instead, I found myself standing in the Hayes family study, staring down at a mountain of legal papers my future mother-in-law had just shoved across a desk the size of a small continent. The room reeked of old money, mahogany walls, leather-bound books no one had ever read, and the faint polish of power. Vanessa Hayes didn't even look up from her phone when I walked in. She just slid the document toward me, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "Sign it." 2 words. Flat. Dismissive. Like she was asking a maid to clear the dishes. For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. "I'm sorry, Vanessa, what is this?" That's when he spoke. David Miller. The family's in-house lawyer, Marcus's brother-in-law, and the only white man in the room. He didn't even bother to hide his smirk as he leaned back in his chair, hands folded, ready to watch the show. And the rest of them, Marcus's siblings, his cousins, stood around like wolves circling dinner, waiting for the poor girl from the wrong side of town to break. They had no idea. No idea that I had $15 million quietly sitting in an investment account. No idea that I had my own lawyer, one phone call away, ready to burn their little power play to the ground. Before I tell you what was in that insulting document, and how I handled it, tell me this: have you ever had to smile through an encounter with someone who looked down on you, convinced you weren't enough? If you have, stay right here. Because this story doesn't end the way the Hayes family expected. That day in the study, their laughter, their smug little looks, it all felt like déjà vu. But this time, something inside me shifted. I straightened my spine, pressing down the tremor in my hands until it disappeared. Vanessa finally looked up from her phone, clearly bored of the theatrics. "Imani," she said, her voice smooth as marble, "this is standard procedure in families like ours. Surely you understand. It's nothing personal." Nothing personal. The words almost made me laugh. Because what could be more personal than being told, 3 days before your wedding, that your love was a transaction, and you were the liability? I glanced at the document. My name, printed neatly in black ink on the first page, right next to Marcus's. I scanned a few lines, enough to see the truth. If I signed, I would walk into marriage stripped of everything. No claim to shared assets, no rights to future earnings, no protection. It wasn't a prenup, it was a muzzle. David watched me like a cat watches a trapped bird. "So," he said, tapping his pen against the page, "shall we get this over with?" I met his gaze, and for the first time I smiled. Slowly. Deliberately. "Of course," I said softly, sliding the document toward me. "But before I sign anything, I should probably have my attorney look this over." That got their attention. David's smirk faltered. Vanessa's phone stilled in her hand. Even Chloe stopped mid-eye roll. "Your attorney?" Vanessa repeated, her brow arching as if I'd said my spaceship. "Yes," I said, pulling out my phone and scrolling casually. "You know, the one who's been handling my portfolio since my app launched? He's brilliant with contract law. I'm sure he can clear up a few of these interesting clauses." Chloe frowned. "Your app?" I looked up, meeting her eyes. "Oh, right. I forgot you all never asked about that." I gave her a smile so sweet it burned. "We just hit a valuation of $42 million last quarter." The silence that followed was delicious. David blinked. Vanessa's lips parted, then pressed into a thin, bloodless line. Chloe actually took a step back. And that's when I knew I had them. I placed my phone on the desk, my tone cool, almost lazy. "So here's what's going to happen. My lawyer will review this little formality. If he approves, maybe I'll consider signing. If not," I paused, letting the words hang like smoke, "then you can tell your guests that the wedding's off, because your son's fiancée refused to be bullied into a contract she doesn't need." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Vanessa stood, every inch of her controlled composure beginning to crack. Imani, you're making a scene, she hissed. I smiled wider. No, Vanessa. I'm just making a point. And for the first time since I walked into that gilded tomb of a room, the air shifted. They weren't the predators anymore. They were the ones trapped. I looked at each of them slowly, letting the silence stretch. The air felt heavy, almost electric, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm. Too calm. Vanessa, I said, folding my hands neatly over the document, I appreciate your thoroughness. Really? It's impressive how much effort went into this. Her brows twitched, uncertain if it was sarcasm. I continued before she could respond. But there's just one problem. I leaned forward slightly, meeting her gaze head-on. I don't sign things I don't understand. And I certainly don't sign things written by people who think they own me. David gave a sharp little laugh, the sound of a man who'd never been told no. You don't understand how this works, he said, his tone dripping condescension. This isn't negotiable, Imani. These terms are standard. Standard for who? I cut in, my voice slicing through his words like glass. For gold diggers? For women you assume need saving? His mouth opened, but no words came out. I stood, the chair legs scraping softly against the polished floor. I came here thinking I was marrying into a family, I said, each word deliberate. But apparently, I was auditioning for a position. Chloe rolled her eyes. Oh, please. Spare us the monologue. I smiled, slow and dangerous. You're right, Chloe. I'll spare you. Because this conversation is over. I picked up the prenup and flipped to the front page. Then, with deliberate care, I tore it cleanly down the middle. The rip was loud in the silence, sharp and final. David lunged forward. You can't I just did. I dropped the torn pages onto the desk, the pieces fluttering like snow. Vanessa rose halfway from her chair, fury flashing in her eyes. Do you have any idea what you're doing? Oh, I do. I straightened, sliding my phone from my bag. I'm calling Marcus. Her jaw tightened. He won't pick up. Then he'll call back, I said simply, scrolling through my contacts. Because if he doesn't, if he lets you humiliate me like this, then he's not the man I agreed to marry. Vanessa's lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, she looked uncertain. I stared her down, my pulse steady. You wanted to test me, Vanessa. You wanted to see what kind of woman your son was marrying. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Now you know. I turned toward the door, heels clicking against the marble like punctuation marks. At the threshold, I paused and looked back. Oh, and Vanessa? I said, my tone almost sweet. Next time you want someone to sign their life away, maybe pick a girl who doesn't own half a tech startup. Her expression cracked, just for a second, and it was glorious. Then I walked out, head high, the shredded prenup left behind like a corpse on her mahogany altar. As the elevator door slid open, I stepped into the quiet of my penthouse, all glass and steel and soft light. The city stretched out before me, glittering through the floor-to-ceiling windows like 1,000 unspoken promises. I dropped my purse on the marble counter and finally let out a shaky breath. The silence pressed around me, thick and humming. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to erase the last hour from my memory, but I didn't. Instead, I walked straight to the wall of framed patents and design awards in my office, the ones I deliberately kept secret from the Hayes family. I ran my fingers over the smooth glass, grounding myself. I wasn't the girl they thought I was. I wasn't the charity case they wanted to parade at their country club luncheons. And I sure as hell wasn't someone's convenient accessory. I was the woman who'd built something from nothing, who'd stayed up until 3 a.m. debugging code on a second-hand laptop, who'd pitched investors while half the people in the room thought she was just the assistant. And now they wanted me to sign away everything I had built. My phone buzzed on the counter, snapping me out of my thoughts. The screen lit up, Marcus read hard. I stared at it, my stomach twisting. For a moment, I didn't move. Then I hit accept. Hey, his voice came through, calm and familiar. Too calm. Hey, I said, my tone flat. I just got off the phone with my mom, he started, a hint of irritation slipping in. She said you left upset. Something about the prenup? I let out a dry laugh. Something about the prenup, I echoed. Yeah, Marcus. Something. There was a pause, the kind that told me he already knew what this was about. Look, he said finally, I told you this would come up eventually. My parents just want to make sure what? I cut in. That I know my place? That I don't get too comfortable near their precious assets? He sighed. Imani, it's not like that. You know how families like mine operate. It's just business. I stared out the window, the city lights reflecting in the glass. Business, I whispered. Marcus, do you have any idea what that document said? It wasn't a prenup. It was a leash. Then we can revise it, he said quickly, his voice taking on that soothing tone I'd once found comforting. Don't make this a big thing. I'll talk to David, we'll figure something out. I could hear voices in the background, men's laughter, clinking glasses, the faint echo of golf course chatter. You're at the club, aren't you? I asked quietly. He hesitated. Yeah. Dad wanted me to meet a few donors for the gala, men's business, I finished for him. The silence on the line stretched, sharp and suffocating. Imani, he said finally, his tone softening, don't do this. Don't blow things out of proportion. You know I love you. I closed my eyes. Love. The word hit differently now, hollow, weightless. I know, I said quietly. But love shouldn't come with fine print. Before he could respond, I ended the call. For a long moment, I just stood there, the city lights flickering across my reflection. Then I walked to my desk, opened my laptop, and pulled up the secure file Jessica had sent me, the revised prenup, already dripping with red annotations and legal fury. My lips curved into a slow, cold smile. If the Hayes family wanted to play business, I was more than ready to meet them on the battlefield. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, I saw him without the soft filter of love. The charming smile, the easy laugh, the way he always said the right thing when people were watching. All of it was a performance. And I had been the audience. Forget about it? I repeated, my voice trembling, not from weakness, but from the effort of keeping it steady. You want me to forget that your family tried to buy my obedience? You want me to forget that you let them? Imani, please, he said, his tone desperate, palms open as if he could smooth this over. It's just business. It's what people in my family do. My dad insisted. My mom, your mom, I interrupted sharply, is a bully. And your dad hides behind her. I took a step closer, my eyes locked on his. But what's your excuse, Marcus? He blinked, taken aback. My excuse? Yes, I said, my voice gaining force with every word. What's your excuse for standing by while they humiliated me? For being so terrified of disappointing them that you forgot who you're supposed to protect? He ran a hand through his hair again, pacing, his voice rising. You don't get it, Imani. That's my family. My name. It's not as simple as you think. I laughed, sharp and joyless. You're right, Marcus. It's not simple. It's pathetic. He stopped pacing. The color drained from his face. You talk about love like it's some kind of shield, but love without respect is just decoration. I picked up the prenup again, holding it between us. This is what your love looks like to me. He reached out for it, panic flickering in his eyes. Stop, please, I tore it in half. The sound was loud in the quiet, brutal, and final. This, I said, tossing the shredded pages onto the counter, is the last time I let anyone tell me what I'm worth. He stood frozen, his mouth open, searching for words that didn't exist. Imani, he whispered finally, I didn't mean for it to go like this. You have to believe me. I took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. I believe you, I said quietly. I believe you didn't mean for it to happen. but you let it. And that's worse. His eyes glistened. So what are you saying? I'm saying the wedding's off. The words hung between us, heavy and irrevocable. He flinched as if I'd struck him. You can't, Imani, please. Everyone's coming. The vendors, the guests, I shook my head. They'll survive. So will I. I reached for the engagement ring, slid it off my finger, and placed it on the counter beside the torn contract. The diamond sparkled cruelly under the pendant light. Marcus's voice broke. You're just going to throw everything away? I met his eyes, and for the first time, there was no hesitation, no fear, only clarity. No, Marcus, I said softly. I'm taking it back. I turned, walked to the elevator, and pressed the button. The door slid open with a soft chime. Before stepping in, I looked back one last time. He was still standing there, motionless, surrounded by the glitter of everything his family valued: money, image, control, and none of it could save him. Goodbye, Marcus. The doors closed, sealing the silence between us. As the elevator descended, I felt it, the weight of years lifting off my shoulders. My heart ached, yes, but beneath the ache, something fierce was blooming. Freedom. And maybe, just maybe, revenge. Jessica's grin widened until it looked almost feral. Good, she said, eyes glittering. Because we're not playing defense. We're going to make this a lesson so loud they can't ignore it. She laid out the plan like a general issuing orders. First, she said, preserve everything. Every email, every text, every photo of that contract. Don't throw anything away. Lock down your accounts, change passwords, and don't engage with anyone from the Hayes camp unless I say so. Second, I want a sworn statement from you, a short, factual timeline of what happened today. Dates, times, who said what. Keep it unemotional. We'll file it with our initial correspondence. Her voice was brisk, efficient. Third, I'll draft a cease and desist and a demand letter. We give them a choice: retract publicly, withdraw the document, and agree to negotiate in good faith, or we file suit for duress, unconscionability, and intentional infliction of emotional distress, and we seek the return of deposits and damages. We'll also demand an accounting of any communications about this ambush. I absorbed it all, one instruction at a time. The legal language felt clinical against the hot pulse of my anger, but it steadied me. NPR? I asked, because I could see the headlines forming in my head, and I wanted to control them, not be dragged into them. Jessica's face went hunter sharp. We'll use it. Not now, not before we give them a chance to do the right thing, but soon. If they refuse, we issue a statement. We don't leak. We don't beg. We present facts: an attempted coercion, a predatory contract, a family trying to extort a bride under threat of public humiliation. We'll offer the press documentation, the draft, their signatures, witnesses. The story will be about a powerful family trying to weaponize a prenup. The victim will not be some faceless gold digger. She'll be the founder of a multi-million-dollar company who built her business from scratch. I felt something shift in me, a slow, satisfied tightening. That was the thing about being underestimated: when you were finally seen, the reveal could be delicious. Jessica continued, I want your financials, full, audited, the wiring confirmations. We'll show them you are not a charity case. Not because it matters what you own, but because the Hayes playbook depends on that assumption. We expose the lie. I pulled up the Unoya files without hesitation. The numbers were clean: revenue growth, user retention stats, the final wire confirmation for the $15 million buyout from the recent investor round. For 6 years I had poured my nights and weekends into Unoya, the app that started as a simple guided journal and breathwork tool and had grown into a culturally specific wellness platform for Black women. We'd signed partnerships with clinics, sold licensing to corporate wellness programs, launched a mental health initiative in historically underserved neighborhoods. When the takeover talks began last winter, I'd felt vindicated, not just for myself, but for the women Unoya was built to serve. Jessica watched me scroll, then nodded once. Perfect. Send everything to my secure portal. Also, engagement ring appraisal, receipts, vendor contracts for the wedding, and the emails booking the venue and deposits. We'll craft a demand for reimbursement if they try to enforce a clause they never properly disclosed. We'll make sure any attempt to name you at fault is defensible as absurd on its face." She paused, as if sensing I needed permission to move from anger to action. "One more thing, I want you in public. Not hiding. Attend the gala if you want, but not like a scorned woman. Attend like the founder and the woman they tried to erase. Walk in with your head high. If they try to humiliate you there, we will be ready to litigate and to go public immediately. The optics will destroy them. Trust me." Her certainty filled the room like a bright, dangerous light. I thought of Vanessa's smirk, of Chloe's giggle, of David's calm predatory smile. I thought of Marcus fidgeting at my kitchen island while his family treated me like an intruder in my own life. "How long?" I asked. "1 hour," Jessica said. "I'll draft the letter. You'll sign the affidavit. We mail demand and give them a 24-hour window to comply. If they don't, we file by morning. We make noise. We take the moral high ground and back it up with documents." I swallowed. The plan felt ruthless and right. "Also," she added, softening just a fraction, "call your board. Tell them you might need to step into the spotlight. They'll support you. You built Unoya, let them know what's happening. This is why founders build a support network." I thought of my partners, of the nights we'd huddled over code, of the early adopters who had messaged me about how Unoya had saved them during panic attacks and postpartum depression. I felt a fierce loyalty to that work, to the women who trusted us. They deserved a founder who would not be bullied into silence. "Okay," I said. "I'll send everything." We moved like a well-oiled machine. I typed the timeline. I uploaded the wire confirmation for the Unoya buyout. I attached the vendor invoices and the photos of the document, face up on Vanessa's desk. Jessica drafted language so cold and precise it felt surgical. She promised to make the Hayes family decide, apologize and walk back, or face public litigation. When we hung up, I sat in the glow of my laptop, the Atlanta skyline a smear of city lights behind me. My hands didn't shake anymore. The rage was there, bright and clean, but it had a direction now. It was aimed. I pulled open the closet where my wedding dress hung, the custom silk I'd planned to walk down the aisle in 3 days. For a long moment I looked at it like it was someone else's garment. Then I closed the door. I had other armor to put on. One that wasn't sewn from lace or approval, but from the work I'd done and the truth I was finally ready to show. We had just been partially acquired by a major Silicon Valley firm. The payout had finalized 7 days ago. I had kept it quiet. Even from Marcus. Not to be deceptive. But because I wanted to be sure he loved me for me. I wanted his family to accept me. I didn't want to be Imani the tech millionaire. I just wanted to be Imani. What a joke. All they saw was a poor girl from North Carolina. "I've sent it," I said. "Good," Jessica said. Her eyes were already scanning the numbers. "Here's what we are going to do. We are not going to refuse this prenup. That's what they expect. We are going to rewrite it." She started typing furiously. "We are going to draft an addendum," she said. "A list of our own terms. And we are going to send it back to Mr. Miller tonight. We are going to send him an addendum so brutal, so ironclad, it's going to make him wish he'd stayed in real estate law." As she mapped out the strategy, she suddenly paused. "Wait a minute," she said, more to herself than to me. "Hayes Hospitality Group?" I asked. "I heard something last week," she said, pulling up another window on her screen. "From a client of mine. A major food and wine distributor." She scanned the screen. "Ah, here it is. Your future in-laws are in trouble, Imani. Deep trouble. They're over 90 days late on payments to 3 of their biggest vendors." She looked up at me. "And David Miller? That's even juicier. His little boutique law firm? They're being sued." Massive malpractice suit from a former client. Rumor is he's about to be disbarred and lose everything. I just sat there, stunned. Trouble, I said. But they seem so rich. The house, the cars, the gala. Jessica let out that dangerous laugh again. Paper rich and cash rich are two very different things, baby. All that flash? It's a house of cards. They're not just trying to protect their assets. She leaned in, her eyes glinting. They're protecting a sinking ship. And now? This just got a whole lot more interesting. She closed the files. Get some rest, Imani. I'll have the draft of our addendum by morning. And I'll have my investigators dig up everything there is to know about the Hayes family's finances before the sun sets tomorrow. The call ended. I sat in the silence of my office. The city lights twinkled outside. Marcus was gone. The apartment was empty. And I finally understood. The prenup was not just an act of arrogance. It was an act of pure, cold desperation. And they had just shown their entire hand. To the last person they ever should have. The next morning, the air was crisp and clear. It was 2 days before the wedding. She didn't sit. She didn't smile. She just opened the folder in front of her and slid it across the table toward Lawrence Hayes. I suggest you read this, she said, her tone flat, controlled, and deadly. Every word. Every figure. And then we can talk. Lawrence picked up the folder, his brow furrowing as he flipped through the pages. I watched him. His perfect composure cracked almost imperceptibly at first, then more obviously as the report sunk in. David Miller, on the other hand, was sweating. Tiny beads of it forming at his hairline. His hands twitched. He cleared his throat, trying to salvage some shred of authority. Now, I'm sure you'll see, he began, that these numbers, stop, Jessica interrupted, her voice sharper now, like steel. You'll see nothing if you keep talking. Just read. Lawrence's eyes darted across the pages. The bridge loans, the high-interest debt, the delinquent vendors, the looming deadlines. He skimmed faster. His jaw tightened. This can't be right, he said finally, voice low. We're not that far behind. I'm afraid the numbers are exactly correct, Jessica said, her gaze fixed on him. And they paint a very clear picture. Hayes Hospitality Group is over $2 million in the red. Your loans are due in the next 30 days. If you default on the first, it triggers a cascade. Vendors, creditors, everything collapses. And David Miller here? She leaned in slightly toward him, cold and precise. He has a malpractice suit that will almost certainly result in disbarment and a judgment of over $800,000. He is, as of this moment, utterly exposed. David's mouth opened, then closed. His usual confidence had evaporated. He looked like a cornered animal. I felt a rush of satisfaction. The little smirk Marcus's family had relied on for years was gone. Stripped. Jessica turned her attention to me. Now, Imani, the addendum. She pulled the second document from her briefcase. We've rewritten the terms. Every clause is ironclad. Every loophole you were forced into attempting to control is now ours. They wanted a walking ATM. They will now be bound by contracts that protect you and punish any attempt to abuse the terms. Every vendor deposit. Every wedding expense. Every dollar they might try to claim from you. Covered. Enforceable. And public if necessary. Lawrence looked up, panic starting to creep into his eyes. This is aggressive, he said, voice wavering. I'm just protecting my client, Jessica said simply, calm as a blade. And let me be very clear. This isn't a negotiation. You either accept these terms, or I will file the appropriate motions immediately. We can make this public, with evidence. And we will. I could feel the power shift. It was a tangible, delicious change in the air. I was no longer the girl from North Carolina they thought they could humiliate. I was the one in control now. David Miller swallowed hard. Ms. Thompson, Call me Imani, I said, my voice flat, steady. Lawrence dropped the folder on the table, slumping slightly in his chair. The veneer of authority that had always been his armor was gone. He was suddenly very human. Jessica looked at me and nodded once. A single, sharp motion. The message was clear, it was my move now. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch. The wedding was still 2 days away. But I knew exactly how this was going to end. Jessica didn't stop. She held up another finger. Clause 3, she said, her tone measured, precise. Any attempt to enforce any portion of your original draft, or any future document designed to encumber or control Ms. Thompson's assets, will be met with immediate litigation for damages, including but not limited to court costs, attorney fees, and punitive damages. Lawrence's hand shook as he gripped the edge of the conference table. His voice was barely audible. This is ridiculous. You can't, Clause 4, Jessica interrupted, her eyes locking onto his. Any attempt to claim fault for a separation or termination of marriage will be considered malicious harassment. My client will retain the right to seek full compensation, including all wedding deposits, gifts, and expenditures, plus any additional financial damages deemed appropriate by the court. David Miller tried to interject. Ms. Adebayo, please, this is excessive, save it, Mr. Miller, Jessica said, her calm voice now razor-sharp. Clause 5. Any communication to vendors, family, or the media attempting to defame, manipulate, or coerce Ms. Thompson will constitute libel, slander, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The remedies for violation will be swift and comprehensive. Lawrence's face was now beet red. He swallowed hard, eyes darting between the folder, me, and Jessica. Jessica leaned in slightly, her voice lowering. Clause 6. Ms. Thompson reserves the right to make all executive decisions regarding her personal and professional finances, including investments, business transactions, and charitable contributions, without interference or consent from the Hayes family. Any attempt to influence these decisions will be treated as an act of coercion. She tapped the folder decisively. And finally, Clause 7. If the Hayes family fails to return the notarized signed addendum by 5 p.m. today, the wedding is cancelled. Public notice will be given immediately. My client walks away with full rights, full control, and full compensation for any losses caused by their actions. I watched Lawrence. The man who had never known what it meant to be powerless now looked smaller than I had ever seen him. David Miller was trembling. His usual smug arrogance was gone, replaced with something like fear. Jessica looked at me briefly, a tiny nod of reassurance. Then she turned her gaze back to the men across the table. Any questions? She asked, voice sharp. Lawrence opened his mouth, then closed it. Words failed him. Finally, he muttered, This can't be legal. It is, Jessica said simply, sliding a copy of the notarized financials across the table for him to see again. And it is enforceable. You gambled that Ms. Thompson would roll over. You miscalculated. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of control settle over me. The arrogance, the humiliation, the manipulation, none of it would touch me now. Lawrence Hayes, patriarch of a family built on image and fear, finally understood the truth. I was untouchable. And I was just getting started. Lawrence's face drained of color. He gripped the edge of the table like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Jessica didn't pause. Her voice stayed steady, cutting through the tension like a scalpel. And the bridge loans you took out in the last 6 months, she continued. High interest, short term, just to keep the lights on. The first one is due in 30 days. Default on that, and it triggers a cascade. Vendors, creditors, everything. Gone. Your empire is built on borrowed time, Mr. Hayes. Lawrence's hand shook as he slammed the folder onto the table. You can't just come in here and, I just did, Jessica said coolly. And if your family refuses to sign the addendum by 5 p.m. today, the wedding is cancelled. Publicly. And Ms. Thompson walks away fully protected. Every penny, every asset, every dollar. David Miller's chair squeaked as he leaned back, defeated. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Jessica's eyes flicked to me. Imani, would you like to summarize for Mr. Hayes? I leaned forward slightly, my voice calm but sharp. This isn't about a prenup anymore. It's about your desperation. Your family is crumbling. Your lawyer is ruined. And your only solution was to try to trap me into signing away my life and my work. Lawrence's jaw twitched. He opened his mouth, then stopped. Words had failed him. I continued, louder this time, letting the room feel the full weight of the truth. I'm not scared. I'm not intimidated. And I am not walking into this marriage under threat, manipulation, or fear. The choices are simple: you sign the addendum, or the wedding is off. You'll face the consequences of your own decisions. Jessica stood behind me, arms crossed, her presence a shield. David Miller slumped further, his usual smugness gone. He was outmatched and he knew it. Lawrence's hands trembled as he stared at the documents. This is outrageous. It's extortion? Jessica said, her tone mild, almost conversational. Blackmail? No, I said, my voice firm. It's justice. The room was silent except for the occasional shuffle of papers and the sharp intake of breath from Lawrence. Finally, he sank into his chair, defeated, his arrogance shattered. The patriarch who had thought he could intimidate me, control me, and buy his way out of accountability, was now forced to sit quietly, completely exposed. Jessica leaned in, her voice low and sharp. David, your firm is collapsing. Lawrence, your empire is built on a house of cards. And Ms. Thompson? She's untouchable. So here's what I suggest: comply, save face, and avoid public humiliation. Or fight us. And believe me, you will lose. Lawrence stared at her, then at me, and finally at the documents sprawled across the table. His silence said it all. I had never felt more in control. And for the first time, Marcus's family was realizing just how badly they had miscalculated. The countdown had begun. 5 p.m. today. Sign, or lose everything. I smiled quietly to myself. This was only the beginning. You've taken out 2 high-interest bridge loans in the last 6 months, Jessica continued, her voice razor sharp. And the first one is due in 30 days. You're not just struggling, Mr. Hayes. You're drowning. Lawrence's face had gone pale. Fury was gone, replaced by a sick, gray understanding. Let's stop the charade, Jessica said, stepping closer, voice slicing through the silence. You didn't shove that insulting prenup in my client's face to protect the family. You did it because you're desperate. You were trying to trap your son. Hoping to lock him into a marriage with a woman you assumed was poor and powerless. A woman with no one to fight for her. She leaned forward, hands flat on the table. You wanted to make sure that when your financial house of cards came crashing down, there would be at least one asset, your son's unsuspecting new wife, that your creditors couldn't touch. And this entire extravagant wedding? Just a performance. A desperate show to convince your lenders and vendors that everything is fine, long enough for you to secure another loan. Jessica straightened. You weren't protecting your family. You were trying to find one last victim to feed to your creditors. The room went silent. Absolute silence. Lawrence Hayes looked at me, and for the first time I didn't see arrogance. I saw raw, unadulterated fear. He finally understood. He wasn't in a negotiation. He was under interrogation. It wasn't just his son's wedding on the line. It was his empire. Every mismanaged loan, every overdue vendor payment, every faltering creditor call, it could all collapse if the truth came out. Lawrence's breathing was shallow, jagged, like a man punched in the gut. His hands trembled, not from weakness, but from volcanic rage. His eyes, which had been darting between me and Jessica, finally locked on me. You, he whispered, voice cracking. You did this. You investigated us. My family. It was the first time I had spoken directly to him since entering the room. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I met his fury with a cold, steady calm I didn't even know I possessed. I'm just protecting myself, Lawrence, I said, voice like steel. The same way you thought you were protecting yourself. I gestured to the original insulting contract, still lying on the table. You came at me with lethal weapons, thinking I was unarmed. You were wrong. I picked up our addendum, Jessica's masterpiece, and held it like a weapon. You have 24 hours to sign this, I said, letting my words sink in. 5 p.m. today. David Miller croaked out the words, finally finding his voice. Or you'll call off the wedding. I almost smiled. He still didn't get it. He still thought this was about a wedding. I looked past him, back at Lawrence. He was the only one who mattered. Or, I said, letting the word hang in the air like a guillotine, you watch everything you've built crumble. The room went cold. The empire of arrogance, the vaunted Hayes family, had just met its match. Vanessa's smile would have faltered the moment she saw his face. Chloe, ever the queen bee, would have leaned forward, curious, sharp eyes expecting triumph. What is it? Vanessa would have asked again, her voice clipped now, just enough to hide the flicker of worry she felt. Lawrence didn't answer. He just turned toward the bar, poured the whiskey, and let the amber liquid settle in the glass. His hands trembled slightly as he lifted it to his lips. David Miller shuffled behind him, a trail of guilt and sweat in his wake. He had nothing to offer, no words of comfort, no clever legal dodge. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Nothing. Chloe's sharp laugh, designed to intimidate, would have caught in her throat. She would have exchanged a glance with Vanessa, a silent question passing between them, what happened? Vanessa's voice would have lost its usual authority. Lawrence? David? Speak. Now. And he couldn't. He was beaten. He had handed over the signed addendum. He had surrendered. The empire he had built, the pride he had clung to, the illusion of control he had wielded like a weapon, all of it had crumbled. I could picture it perfectly. The mansion's grand rooms, the chandeliers, the velvet furniture, it all seemed suddenly cold, empty. The walls, witnesses to 1,000 family victories, now echoed only with their silence. Jessica and I had walked out hours ago, leaving a trail of inevitability behind us. The signed documents in my bag were proof, control had shifted, and it wasn't coming back. Vanessa and Chloe, who had so confidently plotted to humiliate me, to assert their dominance, were left with nothing but stunned faces and the bitter taste of defeat. I imagined them pacing, whispering, calculating. The pride of the Hayes women, once untouchable, now crippled by the truth that their power was nothing without the compliance of those they sought to control. And me? I was untouchable. I had my freedom, my fortune, my dignity. And for the first time I could breathe without the weight of their judgment pressing down on me. The wedding would not happen, not under their rules, not under their tyranny. And if they ever tried to strike again, they would know exactly who they were dealing with. Because I was no longer the girl they thought they could scare. I was the woman who held the match. And they were sitting in the ashes of their own making. David Miller would have shriveled under her gaze, his mouth opening, closing, then opening again. I handled it as best I could, he would have stammered, voice barely audible over Vanessa's rising fury. You handled it? Vanessa shrieked, pacing back and forth like a storm incarnate. You let her walk in here, flout our authority, humiliate my family, and now she dictates terms? Terms. Chloe's panic would have turned violent, her hands flailing slightly as she grabbed David by the shoulders. This is your fault, David. Your fault. You incompetent little worm. David would have stared at her, completely defeated, his usual arrogance evaporated, leaving only fear and regret. Vanessa would have slammed her hand on the marble mantelpiece, making the crystal glass tremble. All this time, she hissed, voice low and lethal now, she's been deceiving us. Pretending to be meek, naive, harmless. And all the while, she's untouchable. A girl from North Carolina, driving a beige car, sitting on $15 million. Her words would have hung in the air like smoke. Chloe would have stepped back, stunned, realizing she had misjudged the situation completely. Her perfectly rehearsed cruelty now backfiring spectacularly. Vanessa's face would have twisted, a mixture of rage, disbelief, and humiliation. She dared, she would have whispered, pacing, voice trembling with fury. She dared to investigate my family. To dig into our lives. To find our weaknesses, our debts, our failures. And she used them against us. Chloe, in a desperate attempt to regain control, would have snapped at her mother. "Mom, maybe we can still salvage something. Maybe we," Vanessa would have cut her off with a shriek, spinning to face her. "Salvage? There is nothing to salvage. She's not just a threat, she's a revelation. Every slight, every ignored insult, every attempt to belittle her, it all comes back to her, and now we are exposed." She would have frozen mid-step, remembering that fateful dinner party from the previous year, her own pride wounded. That tiny slip, the Malbec, the polite refusal, had been the first sign. And she hadn't seen it coming. Not then, not ever. Lawrence would have sat in the corner, silent, eyes hollow, knowing that his empire, his legacy, and the facade of power were all crumbling. David Miller, Chloe, Vanessa, none of them could stop it. None of them could regain control. And I would have been smiling quietly, the calm at the center of the storm, untouchable, unstoppable, and fully in control. The Hayes family had just learned the hardest lesson of all: never underestimate the quiet ones, the ones who seem powerless, the ones who are secretly armed with everything you can't even imagine. Vanessa's words would have settled over the room like a cold, heavy fog. "We smile," she said again, her voice low, dangerous, a predator masking desperation with control. "We go to the rehearsal dinner tomorrow night. We toast. We laugh. We appear as though nothing is wrong. Every photo. Every social media post. Every word to the press must scream, everything is perfect." Chloe's face would have twisted with frustration, her sharp features pinched. "But mother," Vanessa cut her off with a look so lethal Chloe would have frozen in place. "No, Chloe. You will do exactly as I say. We maintain the illusion. We play the game. Because if we do not," her voice dropped to a whisper, venomous and cold. "If we do not, the entire empire, every last asset, evaporates. And the world will know the truth. Every loan, every default, every lie. All of it. Gone. Our family's name? Ruined." David Miller, who had moments ago been seething and sputtering, would have straightened, his legal instincts kicking back in. "We can still control the narrative," he murmured, his voice cautious. "The wedding will happen. Photos. Press releases. Carefully curated statements." Vanessa would have smiled, a thin, sharp line. "Exactly. That is all that matters now. We survive. The wedding happens. And after that," her eyes would have glinted with something dark, something calculating. "We rebuild. Quietly. Privately. And we never forget who forced us into this corner." Lawrence, slumped in his chair, would have rubbed his face, the whiskey shaking in his hands. Yes, we follow the plan." Chloe's whisper would have betrayed her panic. "And if she doesn't stop?" Vanessa's stare would have frozen her in place. "She will stop. For now. Because appearances are all we have left. But mark my words, we will not be defeated completely. This is only the first move. And she will learn that even a queen can be caged." And so, the Hayes family would have plotted, smiles forced, eyes sharp, the glittering veneer of perfection masking the chaos just beneath. They were beaten, humiliated, trapped, and yet, in their minds, the war was far from over. Meanwhile, I would have walked away, calm, untouchable, and entirely in control. The match was lit, the flames licking at their empire, and I was standing far enough away to watch it all burn from a safe distance. I called Marcus an hour after I left Jessica. I had to. I had to tell him about the money. He picked up on the second ring. His voice was thin with nerves. Imani, what happened? Are you okay? I'm fine, I said, and I was cold, furious, and clear. Marcus, there's something you should know. We were acquired last week. The payout finalized 7 days ago. Post-tax liquidity, 15.24 million. I let the number hang between us like a verdict. There was a long, stupid silence, then a small, guttural sound from his end, half laugh, half choke. 15 million? You never told me. I didn't tell you because I wanted to know if you loved me without it. I didn't tell your family because I wanted to be loved as me, not as an ATM. My voice didn't waver. That was naive. It was a mistake. But your family isn't naive, Marcus. They tried to trap me. They tried to make me sign away my life 3 days before our wedding. He swallowed. My parents told me they were handling things. I thought, his sentence dissolved. They said it was standard. I thought you'd discuss it with me. I expected you to stand up for me, I said plainly. Not to hide behind them or hope it would go away. Marcus, this isn't only about us anymore. They built a performance to fool lenders and vendors. They gambled on your silence. He was quiet for a long time, the sound of the golf course and club chatter faint behind him. Finally, what do you want me to do? Come to the rehearsal dinner, I said. Be there. But understand this, I will not walk into a marriage built on coercion. I've given them an hour to sign an addendum that protects me. They accepted it today under pressure. Tomorrow, we play their game, but on my terms. I'm going to the dinner as the woman I am, not as the one they want me to be. And if they try to weaponize the wedding again, we have counsel, we have the documents, and we will expose the truth. His voice broke. I don't want to lose you. You won't lose me because of them, I said. You might lose them if you don't finally choose who you want to be, your mother's son, or my partner. After that, he stammered promises and apologies. I didn't expect perfection. I expected a choice. He said he'd be there. That was enough for now. I hung up and closed my laptop. Outside, Midtown glittered and indifferent. Inside, my plans sharpened. Jessica would handle the legal angle. Her team would be ready if the family tried to renege. My PR contact was on standby with a vetted statement. My board knew the basics. I would go to the rehearsal dinner looking like the gracious bride to be on the surface, because optics mattered, but underneath I was armored with facts, witnesses, and options. Tomorrow night would be a performance. I would play my role. But I would do it with my eyes open, my voice prepared, and my finger on the trigger. The Hayes wanted a show of stability. Fine. I'd give them a show they'd never forget. He hesitated, his eyes darting to the floor like a schoolboy caught in a lie. Well, no, he muttered. I just figured, Dad came to his senses, you know? He realized it wasn't worth losing us over. I almost laughed, but it came out hollow, sharp. Came to his senses? I repeated. Marcus, your father didn't come to his senses. He caved. He caved because I backed him into a legal corner so tight he couldn't breathe. He signed because if he didn't, the entire city would know he's a fraud sitting on a crumbling empire. That's why. Marcus's smile faltered completely now. Imani, baby, why would you do that? You didn't have to go that far. And there it was. That far. The words landed like stones. I stared at him, studying his face, the soft boyish lines, the weak jaw, the familiar cowardice hiding under the charm that once disarmed me. That far, I said slowly. Marcus, your family tried to strip me of everything I'd built, 3 days before our wedding, and you're worried I went too far? He ran a hand through his hair, pacing, frustrated. You don't get it. This makes things complicated. You embarrassed them. You humiliated my father in front of his lawyer. Do you know what that does to a man like him? Yes, I said, my voice deadly calm. It shows him that women like me don't fold. He stopped pacing and stared at me, truly seeing me for the first time, and hating what he saw. You've changed, he said softly, as if it were an accusation. This isn't the Imani I fell in love with. No, I said, stepping closer. You fell in love with the version of me who made you feel bigger. The one who listened while you talked about your business trips and your family drama. The one who smiled and made you look successful. That version doesn't exist anymore. He shook his head. You're twisting everything. You're making this ugly. It was ugly, I said, my voice rising now. You just didn't want to look at it. Your family treated me like property, and you stood there pretending not to notice because it was easier than standing up to them. He blinked rapidly, his mouth working, but no sound came out. Finally, he whispered, so what are you saying? You're calling off the wedding? I looked past him to the skyline, the city pulsing with light. It was strange how calm I felt, like the storm had passed, and all that was left was clarity. I'm saying, I said slowly, that tomorrow, I'll go to that rehearsal dinner. I'll smile. I'll toast to the future. And then I'll decide if there's still one left, for us. He swallowed, his throat working hard. Imani, don't do this. Don't throw away everything we've built. I turned back to him, meeting his eyes one last time. Marcus, you keep saying we. But tell me, what exactly did you build? The silence stretched, heavy and final. When he left, he didn't slam the door. He just walked out, shoulders slumped, the sound of his expensive shoes echoing in the hallway. I stood there for a long time, staring at the door. Then I exhaled slowly, the breath shaking loose something deep in my chest. Tomorrow wasn't going to be a rehearsal. It was going to be a reckoning. The words I just wanted it to be over hung there, limp and cowardly, until the silence between us became unbearable. I stared at him, really stared, and in that moment, something inside me went still. It was the kind of stillness that comes right before you realize you've crossed a point of no return. You wanted it to be over, I said quietly, tasting the words. And to make it over, you were willing to let them destroy me. He shook his head violently. No, that's not what it is, I cut him off. Because doing nothing is the same as choosing their side, Marcus. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't ask questions. You didn't defend me. You just stood there hoping I'd swallow their poison so you wouldn't have to pick a fight at the dinner table. His face crumpled. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I walked past him, crossing to the window. The skyline outside was glittering, serene, mocking, almost. My reflection stared back at me in the glass, sharp, calm, distant. Do you have any idea what that meeting was like today? I said without turning. Your father sitting there, so sure of himself, so certain I'd sign away my autonomy. Your mother smirking, your lawyer whispering to her like I was some street girl who didn't understand contracts. They thought they could break me. Marcus's voice came out small. I didn't know. I turned then. You didn't want to know. Because if you knew, you'd have to choose. He opened his mouth to protest, then closed it again, his throat bobbing. I just want peace, Imani, he said finally. I just want things to go back to how they were. Before all this. I laughed softly, bitterly. Before I had power, you mean? That landed. He flinched. His jaw worked, but nothing came out. You know what's funny? I said. If I'd still been broke, if I'd just been that little blog girl they could control, you'd still be standing next to me smiling. Because it would have been easy. Because I would have been safe for you. Don't say that, he whispered. But it's true, I said. You loved me when I fit into your world. You don't know what to do with me now that I don't need it. He stepped toward me, desperation creeping into his voice. I love you, Imani. You have to know that. I just need time to make them understand. To smooth things out. I looked at him for a long moment, and in that look was the quiet realization that love, without respect, is just dependency dressed up pretty. You can't smooth this out, I said softly. You can't negotiate decency. Either you stand up for me, or you don't. And you didn't. He opened his mouth, then closed it. His lips trembled. So what now? I stepped closer, close enough to smell the faint trace of his cologne, the one I used to like. Now, I said, you go home, Marcus. You tell your mother to have the rehearsal dinner without me. His face went pale. You're not coming? I'll come, I said, my voice calm, final. But not as the girl you think you're marrying. He blinked, lost. What does that mean? It means, I said, that tomorrow, I decide whether to marry you, or to destroy everything your family built. His breath hitched. For the first time, I saw real fear flicker in his eyes. I brushed past him toward the door, my heels silent on the hardwood. Good night, Marcus, I said without turning back. You wanted it to be over. You might just get your wish. The elevator doors closed behind him a few minutes later, and when the silence returned, it wasn't heavy anymore. It was clean. I walked back to the window, staring out at the city I'd built my future in, alone. Tomorrow would not be a wedding rehearsal. Tomorrow would be the unveiling. And then, finally, I exhaled. It wasn't a sob or a sigh, just a long, shuddering breath that felt like it had been trapped in my lungs for months. The quiet that followed was absolute. The kind of quiet that fills a room when something fundamental has just ended. I pressed the heels of my palms into my eyes until I saw stars. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, my hands had stopped shaking. I walked back toward the center of the apartment. The city lights stretched out below me, a glittering grid of lives still moving, still thriving. Somewhere out there, people were laughing, eating dinner, falling in love. And here I was, barefoot on a marble floor, standing in the ruins of what I had thought was my future. I picked up the champagne glass from earlier, the one I'd poured to celebrate the victory with Jessica, and stared at it. The bubbles had gone flat. The surface was dead calm. Fitting, I thought, and set it down again. I wasn't sad. Not really. I was emptied out, scraped clean. Beneath the exhaustion, there was something else forming, something sharper, colder, steadier. Resolve. My phone buzzed on the counter. I almost ignored it, but the name flashing across the screen made me pause. Jessica Adebayo. I swiped to answer. Jessica. You sound like someone who's either about to cry or commit arson, she said dryly. Both are on the table, I replied. There was a beat of silence on her end, and then her tone softened. He didn't take it well, did he? He took it exactly the way I thought he would, I said. He was relieved. Not for me, for them. He was relieved I could bail them out. Jessica sighed, a low, knowing sound. Men like Marcus are raised to preserve their family name, not protect the woman they love. You were never going to win that war. I didn't want to win, I said. I just wanted him to fight. I know. There was a long pause. I could hear the faint clink of glass on her end, maybe a drink being poured. Then Jessica said, You did the right thing, Imani. You walked away before they could bury you in their mess. Most women don't get that far. I didn't walk away, I said, my voice low, deliberate. Not yet. That got her attention. What do you mean? I crossed to my desk and opened the drawer. Inside, neat as a surgeon's tray, were the documents Jessica's team had gathered, financial records, loan defaults, invoices, and a full report on Hayes Hospitality Group. I spread them out across the desk, the papers whispering as they slid into place. Vanessa Hayes declared war, I said. She just doesn't know she already lost. Jessica was quiet for a beat. You're not talking about the prenup anymore, are you? No, I said. I'm talking about exposure. All of it. Every loan, every shell company, every vendor they stiffed. They wanted a performance at that wedding, a display of power and respectability. So let's give them one. Jessica's voice went low and dangerous. What are you planning, Imani? I looked out the window again, the skyline reflected in the glass. My own reflection stared back at me, steady, cold, composed. Tomorrow night's rehearsal dinner, I said. Everyone important will be there. The press, the investors, the vendors. I'm going to give them a show they'll never forget. Jessica chuckled softly. You really are my favorite client. Send me everything, I said. The full packet. I want hard copies by noon. You'll have them. She hesitated, then added quietly, be careful. When people like the Hayes start to lose everything, they stop playing by the rules. I smiled faintly. Good, I said. Neither do I. When I hung up, the city felt different, brighter somehow, sharper at the edges. The girl they thought they could crush was gone. Tomorrow night, I wasn't walking into their world as a bride. I was walking in as their reckoning. I just want to say how thrilled we are to welcome Imani Thompson into our family, Lawrence began, his voice smooth, commanding. She is exceptional. He paused, scanning the room. It's rare to meet someone who is so accomplished, so poised, so remarkable. And tonight, we celebrate her joining the Hayes family. Polite applause. Smiles. Nods. All perfectly timed, rehearsed. I felt a flicker of amusement and something colder beneath it, anticipation. They were showing the world the picture-perfect image they wanted everyone to see. Little did they know, I was holding the frame, ready to shatter it. Vanessa leaned toward me, her hand brushing mine lightly, just enough to remind me that she thought she still had control. Remember your role, darling, she murmured, the words slithering like venom beneath the polite exterior. I smiled. Just a small, serene, completely controlled smile. Of course, I whispered back. Marcus beamed beside me, holding my hand, acting the doting fiancé perfectly. But the sweat on his palm betrayed him. He had no idea that he was the only one pretending. That I was not playing the same game. Lawrence continued, raising his glass. To family, to unity, to a bright future. The room echoed with clinks and polite murmurs. I raised my glass too, my reflection in the crystal catching the candlelight. Everyone thought they were watching a celebration of me joining the Hayes family. But I wasn't there to join them. I was there to watch, to wait, and to strike when their perfect little illusion collapsed. And collapse it would. I looked around the room at the gathered crowd, the investors, the local politicians, the business partners. They were all on stage now. Everyone believed the story Lawrence Hayes had spent decades crafting, that the Hayes family was untouchable, untarnished, and thriving. I let my gaze settle on Vanessa. Every smile, every calculated word, every claw hidden beneath a glove of charm, it was all on display. And yet, she didn't see me. Not really. She thought she was the spider, the predator. But tonight, I was the one holding the silk. I sipped my champagne, calm, poised, untouchable. And I waited. The real show, the one no one expected, was about to begin. Her words came out like acid, hissing through clenched teeth. You will never be one of us, she repeated, her grip tightening on my shoulder. You're just the newest novelty. The charity case Marcus dragged home to make himself feel like a good person. I didn't flinch. Not this time. I just looked at her, really looked. The desperation behind her rage. The faint tremor in her hand. The glint of panic behind her fury. Funny, I said softly, for a family so obsessed with appearances, you seem awfully scared of a girl from North Carolina. Her eyes widened, the mask cracking for just a split second before she snarled again. Scared? Oh, sweetheart, you don't scare us. You disgust us. And if you think for 1 second this little fairy tale wedding is actually happening, you're even dumber than I thought. I tilted my head, calm, controlled. Is that right? Oh, it's happening, she said with a smirk, her voice dripping malice. But not the way you think. You see, my mother always wins. Always. And after tomorrow, once that ring is on your finger, she'll make sure you pay for everything you've done to this family. You'll wish you'd never met Marcus. She leaned in closer, her breath hot and sour with champagne. You think that lawyer of yours scared us? You think your little fortune makes you untouchable? You're a fool. And when this is all over, when the cameras are gone and the wedding photos are printed, you'll be nothing but another headline. The gold digger who thought she could outsmart the Hayes family. Her words were venomous, but all I felt was a strange, eerie calm wash over me. I had expected this. Every second of it. Are you done? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Chloe blinked, thrown off by my lack of reaction. What did you just? Because if you are, I continued smoothly, you might want to fix your face before we go back out there. You've got about 60 people waiting to toast to my happiness, and your mascara's starting to run. Her mouth dropped open. I stepped past her, straightening my dress, smoothing my hair with one graceful motion. As I reached the end of the hallway, I turned just once to look back at her. Oh, and Chloe? I said quietly. Next time you decide to threaten someone, make sure they aren't recording you. Her eyes went wide, real, pure fear flooding in for the first time. I smiled, small and deadly. Enjoy the rest of your dinner. Then I walked back toward the golden light of the dining room, my heels clicking against the marble like the slow, steady beat of a countdown. The game had just changed. And this time I wasn't just defending myself. I was going to burn their entire empire to the ground, one perfectly timed move at a time. I lifted my champagne flute and took a slow, deliberate sip, feeling the bubbles sting my throat. Around me, the laughter swelled again, a rising tide of hollow joy. Lawrence was telling some polished anecdote about Marcus's childhood. Vanessa was dabbing at her eyes, pretending to be moved. My mother laughed, my father beamed, my sister leaned close to Chloe, God, Chloe, smiling politely, not realizing she was chatting with a snake. My life, my future, was disintegrating in real time, and no one at that table could see it but me. I placed the glass down carefully, aligning it perfectly with the crease of my napkin. My hand was steady. Too steady. That was how I knew I was done. Truly, completely done. When I finally spoke, it was to my mother, my voice calm, even affectionate. Mom, I said softly. She looked up, smiling that bright, hopeful smile I'd seen my entire life. Yes, sweetheart? I think I'm going to head out a little early tonight, I said. I'm exhausted. It's been a long day. Vanessa's head snapped up immediately, her expression freezing mid-laugh. Oh, Imani, darling, you can't leave yet, she cooed, her voice all honey. We haven't even cut the cake. I smiled, and the expression on my face made her falter. You're right, I said sweetly. But I think I've had my fill for tonight. Chloe's eyes darted to her mother's, panic flickering for just an instant before she hid it behind another brittle smile. Marcus turned to me, whispering urgently, Baby, come on, just stay, please. Don't make this awkward. I turned to him slowly. Awkward? I echoed. Oh, Marcus. We passed awkward about 100 miles ago. He blinked, not understanding. Of course he didn't. He never did. I leaned close, my voice barely a whisper, but each word sharp enough to cut. Enjoy your family, Marcus. They're all yours. Then I stood. The room seemed to tilt for a second, the hush that followed was faint but real. A few heads turned. Vanessa's smile froze entirely, her fork suspended midair. Please, excuse me, I said to the table, polite, controlled, perfect. I'll see you all tomorrow. And with that, I walked out of the private dining room of Jubilee without looking back. The hallway felt colder than before, the marble floor hard and slick under my heels. Each step echoed in the cavernous space, a rhythm that steadied me. I reached the entrance, where the valet waited expectantly. Miss Thompson, he said, recognizing me. Your car? I nodded. Yes, please. While I waited, I took out my phone and opened the recording app. The file blinked at me, CHLOE Hayes _rehearsal dinner.mp3, 1 hour, 23 seconds long. I hit upload. Within seconds, it was syncing to 3 different secure drives, 1 cloud account, and an encrypted folder my lawyer had access to. Insurance. By the time the car pulled up, I already knew what I would do. I would not walk down that aisle tomorrow. I would not wear that dress. I would not become another casualty of the Hayes family machine. Tomorrow, when the orchestra began to play and the guests took their seats, they would discover that their perfect little wedding had no bride. And by the time the news reached the press, by the time Vanessa and Lawrence realized the scope of their mistake, their empire would already be crumbling. Because I wasn't running. I was finishing what they started. Morning arrived like a judge with a gavel. I slept for 2 hours and woke with the same quiet, cold steadiness I'd felt since the recording had uploaded. The city was still. My phone was not. Within 40 minutes my inbox filled. Vendor emails. Urgent texts. A handful of missed calls from numbers that belonged to people who had once smiled for Lawrence Hayes' camera. A headline preview from Jessica's team. A note from Elias, executed. Primary lien holder. Vendors closed. Banking freeze initiated at 7:12. A single line, they don't know yet. I poured coffee with hands that didn't tremble. I read everything. I scanned the feeds my PR team had primed. The document packet Jessica had sent last night was already in reporter inboxes. The Chronicle's tip line pinged. The first vendor, the Floral House, sent a curt message: immediate suspension of services until payment clears. The caterer called twice, his voice shook. We need funds now, or we go COD and pull our crew. In Buckhead, the Hayes household erupted. Men who had spent decades manufacturing calm were being woken by a different sound: creditors. Collections. Lawyers. Demands. The first bridge loan agent called Lawrence at 7:24. The bank placed a preventative hold on several corporate accounts at 7:36 when Elias acquisition notice hit the system. By 8:15 the Hayes Hospitality Group's payment processor flagged irregularities and suspended payroll. At 9:02 a.m. delivery truck from the main linen supplier pulled up outside Jubilee and, by company policy, refused to unload without cleared payment. At 9:27 the wedding planner forwarded an email with the subject line, force majeure? Vendor walkout? And attached invoices marked overdue. Marcus called. The tone was a high-thin panic that no charm could cover. Imani, please, call me. Please answer. I let it ring. I didn't need to hear his fear. I had the sound of a different future in my pocket: Elias's confirmation, Jessica's legal stamps, the audio file safe on 3 drives. I knew, numerically and legally and publicly, the moment their stage would collapse. By late morning the first reporter from a local outlet had a copy of the packet. A short, cautious headline appeared online: Hayes Hospitality facing vendor default, legal trouble for family counsel. The paper's tip jar swelled with sources. Within 90 minutes, social feeds churned. Photos of the family in satin and pearl split screens with court dockets and scanned invoices. The house of cards had a breeze. At Jubilee, panic spread behind the velvet ropes. The maitre d' got a text he couldn't ignore: hold all set up pending confirmation of payment. The orchestra was asked to delay arrival. The cake company called the venue and then the planner. We can't deliver to an unpaid account, the baker said. We will not. Vanessa's voice, when she called Marcus, was something raw and animal. Fix it, she hissed. Fix it now. He answered again and again. He tried his father, he tried his contacts. He tried me. I ignored most calls. I answered just enough to let him tremble with hope and then slammed the door on it. By noon, the rehearsal photos were trending with a different caption: Hayes family under fire, wedding in jeopardy. The charity donors who'd RSVP'd in embroidered scripts were now exchanging nervous texts. A few influential guests quietly messaged the planner to ask, is this true? At 12:17 p.m., the wedding coordinator sent a one-line text to every vendor: stop all non-essential services until further notice. The florist texted back, we're packed. No payment, no install. The band, worried for their fee, threatened to cancel. Inside the mansion, Lawrence's face had the glassy look of a man watching his life unspool. Vanessa paced. Chloe pleaded. David stood in the corner, a man reduced to silence, fingers white around a paper cup. They had woken a sleeping machine, but they had not built the machinery to stop it. I put on my coat and left the penthouse. My step was casual. My expression was composed. I had a speech rehearsed in my head that was 3 lines long and lethal in its simplicity. I had no desire for theatrics beyond clarity. When I arrived at the venue an hour later, police tape was not yet necessary, but tension was. Cars that had once lined a red carpet sat idling. Bridesmaids' text threads were a slow-burning bonfire. The planner met me at the entrance with eyes like saucers. "Miss Thompson," she said, voice small, "we don't know what we're doing." "You do what you were hired to do today," I said. "You keep the guests comfortable. You return deposits as soon as you can. And you," I put the file on the table, "the notarized financials, the addendum, the audio. Call any vendors who haven't been paid. Tell them that payment will be remitted to the primary lien holder as a matter of law. Tell them you've been instructed to expect a new point of contact." She stared, stunned. Who's that?" "Call the number on the documents," I said. "It's my firm." Across the room, Lawrence arrived, disheveled, tie askew, eyes hollow. Vanessa arrived behind him, cheeks flushed with anger, a hand clamped to a phone as if it were an oxygen tank. They scanned the room, and when they saw me standing calmly, something like recognition passed across their faces. They were finally seeing the consequence, not the performance. Lawrence lurched forward. "Imani," he started, the word a rusty plea. "I am not your emergency contact," I said, cutting him cleanly off. "I did not create this spectacle to deliver you from it. I did what I had to do to protect myself. If you want to reclaim anything, you can start by telling your vendors the truth, pay them, restructure, negotiate like adults." Vanessa snapped. "You set out to ruin us." "I set out to prevent being ruined by you," I answered, and the line between accusation and fact was thin and unblurred. Then a small team from Elias's office filed in, crisp and efficient. They were there to take possession of the vendor notes, the bridge loans, the invoices. When their attorney presented certified documents indicating Unoya Ventures was now the primary lien holder, the planner's jaw dropped. The venue's accounting team went white as they realized incoming wires would be rerouted. The phone lines at the Hayes mansion became a chorus of desperate numbers. Lawyers called lawyers. Lenders called for immediate covenant cures that could not be made. Vendors left terse voicemails, "We need cash today." 2 vendors drove to Jubilee and refused to go inside until they'd been assured their payment path. The baker refused the venue's request to deliver until a cleared wire was confirmed. The florist unhooked arrangements from trucks. Chairs arrived and were left boxed in the alley. In the dining room, guests murmured. Someone posted a video, "Where's the bride?" The hashtag was merciless. The social feeds churned with speculation and schadenfreude. By 2 p.m., 2 major donors texted their regrets and withdrew last-minute sponsorships for the gala. Through it all Marcus hovered, a man dissolving in anxiety. He found me near the back entrance, voice small. "Please," he begged, "you can stop this. We can fix it. Sign something, tell Elias to stand down. I'll make calls." I looked at him. For a moment I saw not the boy I'd loved but the man he could have been, someone who would have stood in front of his mother and said, "No." For a moment I felt the old soft place of memory. Then it cleared. "No, Marcus," I said. "You had your chance." The first official press release went out at 2:42 p.m., concise and devastating. Ms. Imani Thompson withdraws participation in the wedding. Hayes Hospitality Group, vendor defaults and pending litigation. Primary lien holder, Unoya Ventures. It included the addendum and the notarized financials as attachments. The reporters who had been hovering snapped to life. The Chronicle's morning scoop became the afternoon headline. At 3 p.m., Vanessa made a last, theatrical attempt. She stepped onto a small platform and called for the room's attention. Her voice was honey with edges. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "we appreciate your patience. Please, this is merely a misunderstanding between families. The festivities will continue. A phone rang, sharp and loud. Vanessa's assistant muttered, "It's the bank. They're calling." "It's bad." Vanessa's color drained. She tried to smile, but the smile did not reach her eyes. I walked up without being stopped. The room tracked me like a single slow breath. I stood beside her on the small dais. The spotlight found me. My next move had been planned for weeks and executed in the quiet of the night. Now it would be public and absolute. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice steady, "thank you for coming. I know many of you have traveled a long way. I'm grateful." I let the civility hang there for a heartbeat. "I am here to say one thing. I will not marry into a family that tried to make me a liability." Gasps. Murmurs. Cameras lifted. Vanessa's hand tightened on the microphone. Her face morphed from anger to something dangerous. "I have given this family every opportunity to act with decency," I continued. "This morning, I offered a path. They chose otherwise. Today, your vendors learned the truth. Your donors learned the truth. And the world will judge you not by the polished image you post but by the choices you make when your empire is on the line." A flurry of questions hit me from the journalists. I answered one clearly, "Yes. I will provide documentation." "Yes. The addendum is signed." "Yes. The audio and the financials are available to press." Vanessa lunged for the microphone, but the sound tech, already briefed by Jessica's team, cut the feed. Cameras kept rolling anyway. Someone live-streamed. The moment was indelible. Then I turned to Lawrence. "You forced this war," I said softly. "You chose to weaponize a contract. You tried to make me your shield. You failed." A dozen phones recorded his face, slack with defeat. I stepped down. I did not walk an inch further down an aisle. I walked out of Jubilee the same way I had entered it that morning, calm, resolute, and free. Outside, the headlines were beginning to load into my feed. The first calls from my board were messages of stunned support. Elias texted, "We have control. Payments routed. Expect vendor cooperation within 48 hours." Jessica's final note, "Press release went well. Prepare for counter-litigation. You did this right." I slid into my car. Marcus watched me from the doorway with a hollowed expression. Behind him the Hayes family staged 100 small dramas, lawyers appearing, fingers pointing, phones ringing. Their empire had not yet burned to the ground, but the match had been struck. I breathed in deep and let the city fold around me. I had not come to humiliate for sport. I had come to reclaim my life. I had not come to make war on the family as people. I had come to stop them from making war on me. Outside Jubilee, Atlanta moved on, errands, traffic lights, business as usual. Inside, a dynasty's veneer had been scratched open for everyone to see. And I, untethered, dangerous, and clear, was finally myself again. The figure in the doorway stepped forward, slow, deliberate, dramatic. Every guest craned their necks, the orchestra sustaining that perfect crescendo. But as the woman moved into the light, a ripple of confusion spread through the crowd. It wasn't me. It was Jessica. Jessica Adebayo, immaculate in a sharp ivory pantsuit that gleamed like polished armor under the Georgia sun. She held a slim leather folio in her hand and a wireless mic clipped discreetly to her lapel. Every inch of her radiated calm, professional authority. And she didn't walk down the aisle. She strode. The music faltered. Guests whispered. Cameras pivoted like startled birds. Marcus froze, his confused smile flickering. Vanessa's hand shot out, gripping Lawrence's wrist. "What is this?" Vanessa hissed, her perfect composure already cracking. Jessica reached the edge of the aisle and smiled. "Good afternoon," she said, her voice amplified and steady. "My name is Jessica Adebayo. I am the legal counsel representing Ms. Imani Thompson." The sound that followed was chaos in slow motion, gasps, murmurs, the rustle of silk and linen. Jessica continued, her words cutting clean through the noise. Ms. Thompson regrets to inform you that she will not be attending this ceremony. The collective gasp was almost cinematic. Marcus blinked rapidly, shaking his head as if to physically erase what he'd just heard. What do you mean?" he stammered, stepping forward. Jessica turned her head toward him, calm, even sympathetic. "She will not be marrying into this family. The engagement has been terminated effective immediately. The reasons," she said, lifting the folio, "are documented here, and will be made public shortly." A ripple of unease moved through the crowd. The sound techs were frozen, the quartet had gone completely silent. Vanessa surged to her feet. "This is outrageous. You can't just," Jessica's smile sharpened. "Actually, Mrs. Hayes, I can. And you might want to sit down before the reporters in the back row start recording your reaction. Because in about 3 minutes, they're going to get an email packet that includes full documentation of your family's coercive conduct, including a certain audio recording featuring your daughter, Ms. Chloe Miller." Chloe went white. "What?" she whispered. Jessica flipped open the folio. "The recording in which you threatened Ms. Thompson's safety and vowed to make her regret the day she ever crossed your family." The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. Phones lifted. Guests whispered with wild energy. Vanessa tried to regain control, standing now, her voice a trembling imitation of calm. This is slander. You will be sued for defamation." Jessica cut her off smoothly. "By all means, Mrs. Hayes. But you'll have to do it with counsel who isn't under disciplinary review. David Miller's bar suspension hearing is already docketed for Tuesday." David's head snapped toward her, the color draining from his face. "That's how, public record," Jessica said simply. Vanessa swayed slightly, her face tight, her lipstick cracking at the edges. Jessica glanced at the stunned crowd and then back at the family. "Oh, and one more thing," she said, almost conversational. "As of this morning, Unoya Ventures, Ms. Thompson's firm, is the primary lien holder on the Hayes Hospitality Group's outstanding debts. Effective immediately, your assets, including this venue, are under review." The last sentence detonated like a bomb. Gasps. Screams. A few guests actually stood up. Lawrence's face turned a dark, terrifying shade of red. "That's impossible," he bellowed, his voice cracking with fury. You can't just buy my company out from under me." Jessica didn't even flinch. "Oh, we didn't buy the company, Mr. Hayes. We bought your debt. The bank was very cooperative. You should really answer their calls." He lunged toward her, but Vanessa caught his arm. Around them, security began moving discreetly toward the aisle, not for Jessica, but for them. And that was when the first phones buzzed. Hundreds of them. Guests, journalists, staff, all glancing down as notifications lit up. Jessica's press release had gone live. Breaking: Imani Thompson calls off wedding to Marcus Hayes amid family scandal, cites coercion and financial misconduct. Under it were attachments, court filings, scanned addenda, and the transcript of Chloe's threats. The murmurs became a roar. The Hayes name, once whispered with awe, now buzzed with scandal. The empire was unraveling in real time, in front of 300 witnesses and a dozen cameras. Jessica closed her folio, perfectly composed. "That concludes my statement," she said softly. "The venue staff have been instructed to clear the premises. Guests may wish to check their phones for details." And with that, she turned and walked out, straight, steady, unhurried, past the stunned guests, past the collapsing family, through the ornate gates of the Swan House, into the blinding Atlanta sunlight. In the car a mile away, I watched it all unfold on the feed. The sound of chaos spilling into the manicured garden was strangely peaceful to me. It was done. The war was over. The empire that had tried to crush me had just destroyed itself, live, in high definition, before the entire city. I leaned back in my seat, the faintest smile curving my lips, and whispered to myself, "Checkmate." The recorded words hung in the air like a blade. For a long beat, nothing moved. Then the sound of phones, hundreds of tiny lights, rising in unison as guests began recording. The hush shattered into 1,000 whispers and then a roar of shocked, excited noise. Chloe's face drained of color as if someone had siphoned it away. She staggered backward, hands clawing at her throat. Vanessa screamed and lunged off the dais, a woman unmoored, every ounce of cultivated polish collapsing into raw panic. Lawrence looked like a man watching a film of his own funeral. His chest heaved. He could not find a word that fit. David, pale and trembling, tried to force himself forward. "Ms. Adebayo, this is unlawful," he spluttered, voice thin with desperation. "You have no right." Jessica's voice was silk over steel. "Mr. Miller, you should have thought about that before you drafted an agreement intended to coerce my client. The recording is evidence. The addendum is signed. The lien notices have been served. Counsel for Unoya Ventures is on site if anyone wishes to confer about asset control." A dozen cameras turned toward the Hayes table, hungry for faces to plaster across feeds. Vanessa's laugh, not of triumph but of someone cornered, cracked like ice. "You think this will ruin us?" she hissed, eyes burning. "You think you've won?" "I think the truth has weight," Jessica said, calm and absolute. "And I think the people here deserve to know which of you build legacies and which of you build illusions." Marcus's knees buckled. He sank onto the front row chair, hands pressed to his face. For the first time the bravado drained out of him entirely. He mouthed something, an apology or a plea, no sound carried over the storm of press and gossip. My parents rose, faces proud and bewildered, and my mother reached for my father's hand as if to anchor both of them to reality. Their pride was raw and luminous and heartbreaking. Security moved, awkward and unsure. Many were local hires with no stomach for breaking up a public spectacle. The venue manager, pale, stepped forward and announced in a voice that tried for neutrality, "We're suspending the ceremony until further notice." A ripple of relieved murmurs from some vendors, angry shrieks from guests who'd traveled for an event now collapsing. I watched it all from the car feed, chest tight and oddly serene. The adrenaline that had carried me through every plan and counterplan finally ebbed into something quieter, the hollow, settling calm of a reckoning. I did not feel vindictive. I felt finished. Something heavy had been lifted. Across the lawn, Vanessa's image, that rehearsed composure, cracked fully and finally. She stalked forward, voice a shredded thing, to accuse, to plead, to demand. Reporters shoved microphones into her face. The questions came like hail. Is the wedding off? Will you respond to the allegations? How will you repay vendors? Her answers came out clipped, evasive, each phrase a thin curtain behind which the rot showed through. As cameras swarmed, guests began to rise and leave in small clusters, murmuring and texting, signatures of a society that devours scandal with the same appetites it once bought invisibility with. The Hayes table was a tableau of defeat, a portrait of a dynasty that had mistaken fear for power. I turned the phone off. I put it back in my bag. For a moment I let the silence of the car press in around me. I thought of the years of work, of late nights, of code and contracts, of people I had helped with Unoya. I thought of my parents, of Keisha's bright, incredulous face. This had never been about spectacle for me. It had always been about staying whole. When I finally stepped out of the car, the sun struck the stone steps and glittered on the scattered petals. I walked toward the Swan House not to face them, but to collect what was mine, my dignity, my life, my choice. Reporters craned and called, but I kept my head up and my pace steady. I did not need to shout. The world was already talking. Behind me, the Hayes family tried to salvage an image that no longer existed. Ahead of me, something else waited, a life unbound, messy, and honest, where I would answer only to myself. The garden was strewn with white chairs and ruined arrangements, the expensive illusion fallen into ruin. I smelled roses and something sharper underneath, smoke, perhaps, or the sweet iron of victory. I breathed in. I walked away. The camera panned to a sharp, precise signature at the bottom of every ledger page. Jessica's voice carried like a guillotine. That is correct. Ms. Thompson is now the primary creditor for the Hayes Hospitality Group. Every past due invoice, every bridge loan, every obligation currently in default is now owed to her company. As of this morning, any action regarding these debts will be directed by her and her legal team. The family who thought to manipulate and humiliate her is now financially beholden to her. The shock in the garden was palpable. Guests gawked at the screens, their murmurs rising into an uncontrollable hum of disbelief and whispered calculations. Bankers' jaws had literally dropped, a few pulled out phones to confirm the transactions in real time. Lawrence Hayes staggered back a step, clutching his chest as if the world had just turned to ice. Vanessa's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes darting between the screens and Jessica as the reality hit. They were now trapped, their empire in the hands of the very woman they had tried to crush. Chloe sank into her chair, wide-eyed, silent, her face ashen. David Miller, still half-conscious on the grass, was being propped upright by two assistants, but his lips moved soundlessly in horror. Marcus, pale and trembling, had no words. He looked like a man watching his entire life unravel in slow motion. Jessica's gaze swept the crowd, sharp and unyielding. "And just to be clear," she said, tilting the microphone slightly so every word landed like a hammer, "any attempt by the Hayes family to access funds, transfer assets, or interfere with the operation of Unoya Ventures regarding these debts will be met with immediate legal action. Penalties will be pursued to the fullest extent of the law. This is not a threat. This is reality. Your own actions made it possible." Vanessa's voice cracked as she finally tried to respond, her veneer completely shattered. This isn't, you can't," Jessica cut her off with a single glance, sharp enough to silence a lion. "I already can. And I have." I watched it all from the car feed, my hands resting lightly on the leather seat, heart steady, mind clear. The Hayes family, so accustomed to controlling the narrative, had no control here. Not anymore. The camera panned back to the front row. Lawrence sat, stunned and silent, the kind of silence that comes when a man realizes his fate is sealed. Vanessa's face twisted, her carefully constructed mask of composure utterly gone. Chloe buried her head in her hands. And Marcus? Marcus sat frozen, clutching his tuxedo lapels as if they were a lifeline to the man he thought he was. And me? I was finally free. Not by marriage, not by vows, not by luck, but by the one thing they had underestimated, me. The woman they thought they could manipulate, humiliate, and dismiss had won. Every plan, every safeguard, every calculated step had brought this moment into being. The guests were still murmuring. Cameras flashed. Phones rang. And in the middle of it all, I leaned back, smiled softly, and whispered to myself, "Let the real work begin." Because winning this war didn't end with humiliation. It ended with control, mine, finally, entirely, irrevocably. The cameras flashed, the whispers turned into murmurs, then into a roar. Social media exploded before the champagne even settled. The videos of Chloe's threats, Vanessa's collapse, Lawrence's frozen horror, and my quiet, confident walk down the aisle were everywhere within hours. Hashtags trended, articles appeared, and within a single news cycle, the Hayes family empire was no longer untouchable, it was a cautionary tale. Unoya Ventures now held all the cards. Every vendor, every lender, every creditor knew exactly who controlled the debt. Calls flooded in. Lawyers, banks, investors, they all wanted answers, and they all had to answer to me. My phone buzzed constantly, but I let it ring. I was untouchable. I had leveraged every threat, every insult, every ounce of attempted cruelty into an impenetrable fortress. Marcus called a dozen times that day. I didn't answer. I didn't need him. My life was mine. The man I had once loved, the man I had defended and protected, had chosen cowardice over courage, family over me. I didn't feel anger, just a quiet, sharp, exhilarating clarity. By evening, the news had reached Atlanta's business circles. Emails from creditors to the Hayes Hospitality Group demanded immediate communication. The legacy of Lawrence Hayes, once untouchable, now teetered on the edge of collapse. Vanessa attempted to spin, to charm, to negotiate, but no one listened. Her empire, built on deception and inflated appearances, had been laid bare. I watched it all unfold from my penthouse that night, the skyline glowing behind me. My parents called, their voices trembling with pride and awe. "Imani," my mother said, "you've never been more brilliant." My father's voice was steady but full of awe. "You didn't just protect yourself. You've reshaped the playing field entirely." I smiled, leaning back into the velvet armchair, the calm of victory settling over me like a second skin. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free. Not from a relationship. Not from expectation. Not from society. But from the chains of fear, obligation, and manipulation. And in that freedom, I realized something even more delicious. The Hayes family had underestimated one immutable truth. You cannot control a woman who controls herself, and I had just done exactly that. The wedding of the year would be remembered, but not for love, not for joy, not for union. It would be remembered as the day the fox walked out of the henhouse, leaving the predators trapped in their own poisoned game. And I was already planning the next move. The Atlanta Business Chronicle did not just receive an anonymous tip. They had a front row seat. The Hayes Hospitality Group, unable to pay me and with every other creditor now demanding their money, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy the following week. But that was just the beginning. As the primary secured lien holder, my fund, Unoi Ventures, took control. We did not save the company, we liquidated it. Every asset was auctioned to recover the $2.4 million we were owed. The first, most satisfying sale was their flagship restaurant, Jubilee. I oversaw the auction personally, ensuring every overpriced wine bottle, every gold-plated fixture, every item their vendors had gone unpaid for months went to the highest bidder. Justice, as far as I was concerned, was delicious. The fallout was immediate and total. The Hayes family was not just broke, they were disgraced. David Miller, already facing a malpractice suit, was disbarred by the state of Georgia for his fraudulent prenup scheme and embezzlement. Chloe, discovering her husband was as penniless as he was useless, filed for divorce within a month. Marcus, stripped of family, trust funds, and any protection, disappeared to the Midwest to manage a chain of restaurants. Lawrence and Vanessa lost their kingdom, the Buckhead mansion foreclosed, their country club memberships revoked, and their social standing dissolved into whispered gossip. As for me, I had lost a wedding, but I had gained my life. I had already paid for every non-refundable deposit myself, and I called the vendors personally. The wedding is off, I told them. The party is on. That Saturday became a celebration unlike any other, a survivor's party for my real family and my true friends. It was a celebration of freedom, truth, and new beginnings. My mother cried, but this time they were tears of pride. Months later, Unoi Ventures officially launched as a venture fund dedicated to empowering businesses founded by Black women. We were not just investing. We were leveling the playing field, funding innovation, and creating opportunities where none had existed before. 6 months after the fallout, I stood in my corner office, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Atlanta skyline, a city I now had a stake in. I was preparing for a presentation when my phone buzzed. A text from a new man in my life, brilliant, kind, an architect who had read my story and called my strength my superpower. He was confirming our dinner plans. I smiled, a genuine, easy smile. I texted back, locked my phone, and turned to my presentation. I was happy. I was whole. I was free. They had wanted me to sign a document that would prove I was worthless. In the end, they were the ones signing bankruptcy papers because they had underestimated my true value. This story is proof that your self-worth is independent of how others perceive you, especially when their arrogance or desperation blinds them. Those who underestimate you are revealing their own limitations, not yours. True power comes from quietly building your success, defending it fiercely, and having the courage to walk away when others would have chained you. When someone, even a partner, proves they value their comfort over your dignity, believe them. The greatest victory isn't just exposing deceit. It's walking away, building a life of freedom and success, and proving your worth on your own terms, completely outside of their control. If you've ever had to stand up to someone who underestimated your worth, hit like and share your story in the comments below. Your victory might just inspire someone else to reclaim theirs.